Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Pat's Mythos. My name is Pat. Today I'm going to be doing the Led Zeppelin tag. Thank you, RJ Reeds, for tagging me in this. I really do love the band Led Zeppelin. They're one of my all-time favorite bands, probably my favorite classic rock band. And there was a time where they were most of what I listened to, and so really excited to be doing this tag today. Without further ado, let's get into it. Each prompt for the tag is using a song title from the album Led Zeppelin or Led Zeppelin 1. And don't mind me, I'm going to be just peering around the camera to take a look at what I got on my computer screen so I can read off these prompts. And so for the first one, we have Good Times, Bad Times, which is a phenomenal song. Name an author you've read a great book and a bad book from. And my answer for this one is going to be Neil Gaiman. The really bad book, I would say, is American Gods. You may have heard me talk about it in a previous video where I talked about some books that didn't land with me. But American Gods all around is probably the least favorite book I've ever taken the time to fully read. It did not click with me. It was not what I expected. It was strange, off the wall, and not in a good way, meandering. It didn't deliver on what I hoped it would. On the flip side, Neil Gaiman has delivered before, and the book that I would say is good from him is The Ocean at the End of the Lane. The Ocean at the End of the Lane is a pretty short book, probably a little bit longer than a novella, but it's got that same kind of whimsical weirdness that Neil Gaiman's known for, but I think it was executed much better in this book than American Gods. I really enjoyed every moment of it. It has a lot to do with coming home and getting older and kind of reminiscing on your memories and sort of the way that when you're younger, things seem so epic and weird and crazy in terms of, your imagination, and it kind of plays on that. And the story itself is, yes, very strange, but quite enjoyable, and I think that it is very, very good. And for the second question, we have, Babe, I'm going to leave you. Name an author you've outgrown or have no desire to read anymore. So when I first sort of got into reading again as an adult, the first author that I kind of was working my way through the backlog was Michael Crichton. And I really did enjoy his books. The ones that I read, I loved Jurassic Park. I really liked The Great Train Robbery. There were quite a few that I liked, and he's got a huge backlog of work. I don't know why, but I just feel like at this point, I have so many other books and authors that I want to read that I don't see myself really continuing on working through his huge backlog of books. That could change in the future because, like I said, I did enjoy them. I just, as of now, haven't really, in the last few years at least, haven't really felt like reading Michael Crichton. So we'll see if one day I come back to him. But for now, I'm kind of over reading his books. And next we have You Shook Me. Name a book that shocked you with something unexpected. So this one's a little interesting because it's not technically a twist if you recall something from the earlier books, and that would be A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. If you're not familiar, this is actually the 7th book out of 9 in the First Law world and the start of a new trilogy called The Age of Madness. And there is something that happens in that book, and I'm not going to go into detail at all because of spoilers and all, but if you didn't remember a specific detail from the first trilogy, then it is an incredible twist that completely shook me. And on the flip side, if you do happen to remember that detail, I'm sure it makes for some incredible, sort of, what is it, dramatic irony where the reader knows something, but the characters don't. It really would have been interesting either way had I remembered it. But the one detail that I forgot in that book, when that twist came through, I guess you call it a twist, when it came through and the reveal happened, it shook me. I was just totally shocked by it, and it was awesome. Go read Joe Abercrombie in the First Law if you haven't. Obviously, I'm talking about book 7, but they're all really great. Dazed and Confused. Name a book or author you don't understand the hype for. My answer for this is going to be Patrick Rothfuss, but more specifically in The Wise Man's Fear. I read both books in the Kingkiller Chronicle right when I was getting into fantasy a few years ago, and I really liked Name of the Wind. In fact, I loved it. I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I pretty much saw the full hype of what everyone was looking for. And so going into Wise Man's Fear, I saw, this isn't a longer book. It's almost 1,000 pages, and I can't wait to see what happens in this book because we have so much page time. And it honestly just felt like nothing happens. The plot just really is unfocused, I guess you could say. It just meanders along, and I don't think Patrick Rothfuss kind of knew what he wanted out of the story in the end. And that's why I am not surprised that the 3rd book hasn't come out or might never come out. You could kind of tell in The Wise Man's Fear that he didn't really know where he wanted to take the story. It just sort of feels all over the place and doesn't really follow a coherent plot that you might expect. And so at the same time, a lot of people love that book, and it has an incredibly high rating on Goodreads, and a lot of people like it more than the first book. And overall, I just did not see the hype for it. It did not click with me. And I'm sorry, Kingkiller fans. It's just, that's my answer for this prompt. And the next prompt we have, your time is gonna come. Name a book that's been on your TBR for more than a year. My answer for this is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I've owned this physically. I can't find it on my bookshelf right now, but it is, I guess, on my downstairs bookshelf. It must be somewhere. I've owned it for quite a while now. I think I thrifted it. And the premise has always sounded really interesting to me, and I've heard really great things about it. It is I think it's short stories told in a kind of interesting fashion during the Vietnam War. And I know it's commonly, I think, given to kids in high school to read as a kind of English assignment. And so the premise of historical fiction in the Vietnam War, it's supposed to be very emotional, very personal to each short story and the perspective told. It does interest me, and it's not very long. It's maybe 200 to 300 pages. I don't know why. It's just been on my TBR for a while, but I do plan to get to it this year. And maybe when I do, I'll let you know what I thought of it. And the next prompt we have is Black Mountainside. Name a book with an unusual or unconventional setting. My answer for this one is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. This is easily one of my all-time favorite books, probably in my top 10 books. And I don't want to talk about it too much because it's one of those books that you have to go in fully blind to get the most out of it. I don't want to spoil anything, but I could tell you for a fact it has one of the most unique settings that I've ever experienced in a book. And I am so excited to reread this book because that setting is so magical and incredible. I just want to go back and experience it again with fresh eyes. And it will be really great once I get to do that. It's a short book again. Hear me talking about the length of books. Well, this is one that's short and packs an incredible punch for what it is. If you haven't checked out Piranesi by Susanna Clark, I highly recommend giving it a try. For when it works for people, it seems to really, really work. And I've seen a lot of people say they love it. So it's a highly esteemed book. It's one of my favorites. Definitely check it out. And the next one we have here is Communication Breakdown. Name a book you buddy read with someone who you completely disagreed with. All right, RJ, it's coming right back at you. I know you mentioned this for your prompt on your version of the Led Zeppelin tag, and that answer is the Ash and Sand trilogy. I know you loved the first one and did not care for the next two. Meanwhile, I loved the first book. It was really good. I absolutely am obsessed and adored and still think about every day the second book, which is Kings of Ash. It's one of my all-time favorite books, maybe my top 3 ever. Truly, I loved Kings of Ash so much. I seriously think about it all the time. And meanwhile, RJ, who I buddy read it with, gave it like 2 or 3 stars, I think he said, and he just did not see the hype. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here crowning it as one of the best fantasy books I've ever read and one of my favorites. And yeah, that hurt a little bit to go through that buddy read, and nobody was seeing what I saw. But I know a lot of other people do love that series, and it doesn't land with everyone as well. So it's one of those that seems to be flip a coin whether or not you're going to love or hate it. That's okay if it is that way. I know I loved Ash and Sand and Kings of Ash, and I'll always hold it in high regard. No hard feelings, RJ. And the next prompt is I Can't Quit You, Baby. Name an autobi author. That's easy. Joe Abercrombie. I know he's already been used a little bit earlier in this tag, but I just have to say, once I got into the first law, and that was when Age of Madness was coming out, I pre-ordered and bought those books as soon as I could because I knew I was going to be continuing with it. And while the status of the first law is sort of up in the air right now, it's technically finished, but we'll see if Joe Abercrombie leaves it that way. I know he is working on another book, a different fantasy book, different world, completely new to the reader, that I will absolutely be buying day one and anything else he puts out. Joe Abercrombie is easily one of my favorite authors. He will always have a loyal buyer in me whenever he releases a book. And the last prompt we have today, how many more times? Name a book/series you keep coming back to even after you've DNF'd it. So for me, this is a little tough because I don't DNF often. And so the answer to this might shock anybody who is really into fantasy and science fiction. But the one book that I've DNF'd and came back to was actually Dune. That's right. I got Dune when I was in college, when I had just somewhere heard about it before it was super popular with the movie and all. Yeah, that's right. I'm a hipster. I found out about Dune before everyone else in my friend group and all that. And so I got it and I started it during the college school year, which didn't really pan out well. I think I got about halfway and I was enjoying it, but I think somewhere around the halfway part, I had a lot of homework or was doing a lot of work in college and put it down and I just never picked it back up. And I eventually decided I had to go back and read it because it's just one of the pillars of science fiction. And I already owned it. So I think 2 or 3 years later, I went back and read it and finished it. And while I still, I have a love hate relationship with the book Dune, um, I like a lot of what it represents. I like a lot of parts of it. But overall, I don't know if the style of Dune really lands with me, that more kind of thematic, philosophical approach, especially towards the later parts of the book. That being said, I absolutely love the movie. In fact, I think I like the movie a lot more than the book itself. But I did go ahead and finish it, and I completely respect it for what it did for the science fiction genre. So glad I came back and finished it, although I don't think I'll ever continue with the other books in the Dune series. And that's it for the Led Zeppelin tag. Thank you again, RJ, for tagging me. This is a lot of fun to do. And now I'm going to tag a couple of booktubers who I'd love to see do this tag. First, I'd like to tag Cliff's Dark Gems. Cliff, I hope you can make this tag work for you as mainly a horror reader. I think you can. And I know I've seen you wearing some rock band t shirts in your videos. So I hope you love Led Zeppelin and I hope that you have a great time doing this tag. And next, I'd like to tag Christopher Navo. Christopher, your channel is awesome. I know you're newer to BookTube. I'd love to see you do this tag. I hope you like Led Zeppelin to some degree, but nonetheless, consider yourself tagged, and I can't wait to see your responses. And that's all I've got for today, everybody. If you stayed here till the end, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos. I hope that my responses were insightful, and I'd love to get some conversation going down below. Leave me a comment if you have any thoughts on some of my responses, if you agree, disagree. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you again. Have a great day. Bye.